Sarah Mingle was tired of city life, the chaos, the rent, and the endless noise of neighbors. So, when she found a spacious one-bedroom apartment in an older building on the outskirts of town for a fraction of what she was paying, it seemed too good to be true. The landlord, Mr. Hale, was a gaunt man in his 60s, with deep-set eyes and hands that trembled as he handed her the keys. "Been empty a while," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "It's quiet. You like it here?" As Sarah signed the papers, he hesitated before adding, almost as an afterthought, "One rule. Don't open the storage room after midnight." Sarah laughed nervously. "Why? Are you hiding bodies in there?" Mr. Hale didn't smile, his hollow eyes fixed on her, and he said, "It's not my warning. It's the house's." She shrugged it off, chalking it up to a strange attempt at humor. Moving was stressful enough without dwelling on cryptic remarks. Besides, the rent was cheap, and the place felt perfect. The first day in her new apartment passed in a blur of unpacking. Sarah noticed little oddities, like how the light in the hallway outside the storage room flickered, or how the door handle to the room seemed scratched, as if someone had tried desperately to get in or out. By 11:30 p.m., she was finally settled and decided to take a shower before bed. As the water ran, she thought she heard a faint sound, like whispering, coming from the direction of the storage room. She turned off the faucet and listened. Silence. Brushing it off as nerves, she went to bed. But just as the clock struck midnight, the sound returned, soft, indistinct whispers. They weren't loud, but they were persistent. They seemed to emanate from the storage room, growing just slightly louder with each passing minute. Sarah told herself it was just the old pipes or air vents. But something about the rhythm of the whispers unsettled her. They didn't sound random. They sounded like voices talking. To calm her nerves, she shoved a heavy chair under the doorknob of the storage room before retreating to her bedroom. The whispers didn't stop. Every night, they returned at midnight, sometimes faint and fleeting, other times loud enough to wake her up. And always, they came from the storage room. Sarah tried to ignore them, but after a week, the lack of sleep started taking its toll. She became irritable, unfocused, and jumpy. She avoided the storage room entirely, though she could feel its presence like a weight pressing down on her every time she walked by. She started noticing other things, too, like how her reflection in the hallway mirror seemed slower to move than she was, or how the shadows in her apartment seemed to stretch unnaturally long at night, pooling under doors and stretching across the walls like reaching hands. On the 10th night, as the whispers reached a crescendo, Sarah broke. She pressed her ear to the storage room door, trying to make out the words. But they weren't words. They were sounds, guttural, inhuman, layered voices speaking over each other. Her chest tightened with fear. Desperate measures. The next day, Sarah called Mr. Hale. "Something's wrong with this place," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "The whispers, the shadows. What's going on?" Mr. Hale sighed deeply on the other end of the line. "I told you not to open the door." "I haven't," Sarah snapped. "But something's happening. I can't sleep. I feel like I'm losing my mind." There was a long pause. Then Mr. Hale said, "It's not the storage room you need to worry about. It's what's inside it, and it's listening. If you give it attention, it grows stronger." He hung up before she could ask more questions. His cryptic words only made her more paranoid. Midnight curiosity. That night, Sarah sat in her living room, staring at the storage room door. Her laptop lay forgotten on the coffee table, her work abandoned. She couldn't stop thinking about what Mr. Hale had said. When the whispers began, they were louder than ever. They sounded almost human now, pleading, calling her name. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her phone. She had to know what was going on. She set the phone to record, placed it near the door, and retreated to the couch. When the noise finally stopped around 12:30 a.m., Sarah played the recording back. At first, it was just the whispers, but then she heard something that made her blood run cold. Her own voice. It was faint, distorted, but unmistakably hers, whispering, "Help me, let me out." Her phone slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. She hadn't said those words. The shadow. The following night, Sarah woke to the sound of something tapping. It was coming from the storage room. Tap, 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 like nails raking against the door. Heart pounding, she grabbed a flashlight and crept into the hallway. The air was icy cold, and the shadows in the hallway seemed thicker than usual, writhing like living things. She aimed the flashlight at the door, and for a split second, she saw it, a shadowy figure standing on the other side. It was tall and skeletal, with long, clawed hands. Its head jerked unnaturally, as if it were listening for something. The tapping stopped, breaking the rule. The next morning, Sarah called a locksmith. She couldn't take it anymore. She had to know what was behind the door. The locksmith, an older man, arrived later that afternoon. He seemed uneasy as he examined the lock. "Are you sure you want this open?" he asked. "Looks like it hasn't been touched in years." "Just do it," Sarah snapped. With a click, the door unlocked. Sarah held her breath as it creaked open. The room was empty, confused and embarrassed. Sarah thanked the locksmith and shut the door. But as she turned away, she heard it, a faint whisper, just behind her ear. "You shouldn't have done that." That night, Sarah stayed up, staring at the open storage room door. Midnight came, and the whispers began. But this time, they didn't stay in the storage room. They filled the entire apartment, surrounding her. The shadows moved with purpose now, twisting and crawling across the floor. And then, from the storage room, something stepped out. It was the figure she had seen the night before, but clearer now. Its face was a hollow void, and its body seemed to be made of smoke and bone. It reached out to her, its clawed fingers inches from her face. "Come with us," it rasped. Before Sarah could scream, the world went dark. Weeks later, Mr. Hale stood in the empty apartment. Sarah was gone, and her belongings remained untouched. In the storage room, he found her phone. The last recording was still open. He pressed play and heard her terrified voice, followed by a chilling chorus of whispers. "She's here now. You're next." The screen faded to black as Mr. Hale shut the door and muttered to himself, "The house always gets what it wants." Sarah didn't leave the apartment after seeing the shadow. She couldn't. Every time she tried to step out, the whispers began again, this time from her reflection in the hallway mirror. "Don't go," her own voice whispered back at her. Her sleep was reduced to fleeting moments of unconsciousness, jolted awake by loud knocks on the storage room door or the sound of her own name being called. The walls of the apartment felt like they were closing in. On the 15th night, as she sat huddled on the couch, clutching a kitchen knife, the doorbell rang. It startled her. No one had visited her since she moved in. She opened the door cautiously to find an older woman standing there, her face pale and gaunt. She held an envelope in her hand. "You're living here now?" the woman asked, her voice trembling. "I used to live here too." The woman, who introduced herself as Margaret, refused to step inside. She stood on the threshold, glancing nervously at the storage room as she spoke. "I stayed here 6 months before it started," she whispered. The whispers, the shadows. "I thought I was losing my mind." Sarah clutched the doorframe. "What happened to you?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I opened the door." She shoved the envelope into Sarah's hand. "It'll show you. Just don't let it take you too." Before Sarah could ask more, Margaret hurried away, disappearing into the night. Inside the envelope was a collection of photographs, all taken inside the apartment. They were grainy and unfocused, but in nearly every image, a dark figure loomed in the background, just out of reach of the flash. In one photo, the figure stood by the storage room door, a pale hand reaching out. At the bottom of the stack was a note: "Burn the room before it burns you." Terrified and desperate, Sarah decided to follow the note's instructions. She emptied a can of lighter fluid along the baseboards of the storage room and lit a match. For a moment, the flames roared to life, licking the walls and consuming the shadows. But then the fire stopped, snuffed out as if by an invisible hand. The room was untouched, not a single scorch mark in sight. Instead, the whispers turned into screams. They pierced Sarah's ears, growing louder and louder until she collapsed to the floor, clutching her head. "Did you think that would stop us?" a voice hissed. When Sarah looked up, she saw the figure standing in the room, its body flickering between shadow and something grotesquely human. Its face was her face, but twisted and cruel. The next day, Sarah noticed something strange. Her reflection didn't quite match her movements anymore. When she lifted her arm, her reflection was a second behind. When she turned her head, her reflection stared straight ahead. She covered every mirror in the apartment, but it didn't help. At night, she could still see her own distorted face staring back at her from the darkened TV screen or the glass of the picture frames. The whispers began taunting her during the day now, repeating words she hadn't said and memories she didn't recognize. They told her things, terrible things that felt true but couldn't be. On the 20th night, Sarah woke up on the floor of the storage room. The door was wide open, but she had no memory of how she got there. Her phone was next to her, recording. When she played it back, she heard herself speaking in a strange, guttural voice. "I see you. I know you. You can't leave." The whispers escalated, turning into growls and laughter. The shadows in the room began to take form, flickering into monstrous shapes. When she tried to run out of the apartment, she found the front door wouldn't open. The knob wouldn't turn, and the locks were unresponsive. She pounded and screamed, but no one heard her. She was trapped. 2 days later, Sarah noticed something new. A second door had appeared in the storage room. It was made of warped wood and had no handle, only a keyhole. The whispers came from behind it now, louder and more urgent. They pleaded with her, coaxing her to open it. "We can help you," they said. "We can set you free." She ignored the voices, but the door began appearing in other parts of the apartment. She'd see it in the bathroom, in the hallway, even in the corner of her bedroom. By the 25th night, it appeared at the foot of her bed. In her desperation, Sarah called Margaret again. The woman answered on the first ring. Her voice panicked. "You saw the door, didn't you?" Margaret asked. "Yes," Sarah whispered. Margaret's voice shook. "That's not a door. It's a mouth. If you open it, it won't let you go. It'll swallow you whole. What do I do?" Sarah begged. "Run," Margaret said. "But you won't make it." The line went dead. On the 30th night, Sarah decided she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her phone, her keys, and a flashlight, determined to leave the apartment for good. But as she approached the front door, the storage room door slammed open. A powerful wind sucked the air out of the apartment, and the whispers became deafening. The second door stood there, larger now, pulsating like a heartbeat. "You can't leave," the voices said in unison. "You're ours now." The second door opened, and Sarah was pulled inside. She screamed and clawed at the floor, but the shadows wrapped around her, dragging her into the dark void beyond. On the other side, she found herself in an endless, twisted version of her apartment. The walls bled shadows, and every mirror showed countless versions of herself, each one screaming silently, their faces frozen in terror. She was no longer alone. A month later, the apartment was listed for rent again. Mr. Hale smiled as a young man signed the lease, handing over the keys. "You'll love it here," he said. "It's quiet." The young man hesitated. "What's this about the storage room?" Mr. Hale chuckled softly. "Oh, just keep it shut after midnight." In the storage room, Sarah's phone sat on the floor, still recording. The screen showed a faint silhouette, staring directly at the lens. A distorted version of Sarah's voice whispered, "I'm still here. Don't open the door." The screen went black, leaving only the sound of faint knocking.